Well, hello. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll give everyone just another couple minutes to trickle in here. But while we're waiting, it's always kind of fun to see where everyone is located. So if you want to put in the chat where you're at, we have people from all over joining us. So I'm from Salt Lake City, throw that in there.
And I'm in Franklin, Massachusetts.
Enjoying the snow over there.
A little bit.
Oh yeah, we're getting people from all over each side of the United States here.
Excellent.
You even had people, I think our last session, we had a couple up in Canada that joined us, which was always great as well.
I see a couple of familiar names, and it's always nice, but thank you all for joining us.
Okay, well, it is right at the top of the hour, so we will go ahead and get started. We do have a lot of information to cover today, so we'll just jump right in. So thank you all for joining our webinar today, Traveling with Nutrition Support. This is presented by Moog in collaboration with Nutrishare. So my name is Vanessa Sumner. I am a registered nurse with Moog. If you've been on our webinars or any CEs before, you've probably seen me, but welcome. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We do have the chat available and the Q&A available as well. If you have questions, comments, please feel free to utilize that. We will be monitoring that throughout the session. And then after today's session, we will send a follow-up email with a bunch of resources that you all can use for yourselves, your patients, caregivers, on some resources for traveling. Yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Michael, but let me introduce you to Michael Medwar, who is Nutrishare's patient support specialist, helping nutrition therapy consumers achieve their highest quality of life possible and assist caregivers in their difficult journeys as well. So starting at an early age, Michael helped his parents care for his late brother, who was born developmentally disabled. His own health journey began when he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at age 9. His treatment included a brief stint on home NG tube feedings before being placed on home parenteral nutrition for over 17 years, and then again briefly in 2013. Michael has been a proud member of the Oley Foundation since he was a teenager. He previously served on the Oley Foundation Board of Trustees and has been chosen for the Dream Team to shape the 2026 conference. Michael has served as a liaison to the TSA Disability Branch to recommend respectful airport screening practices, and he's assisted patients and caregivers to travel all over the world. In 2024, Aspen honored him with the Lynn Howard Consumer Nutrition Support Award, and in February, he will co-present a roundtable at Aspen on traveling with nutrition support. So thank you, Michael. I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you for the great information. So when we talk about traveling with nutrition therapy, we mostly focus on air travel because it's a common mode of transportation for vacations, visiting family, or for medical visits to centers of excellence. It's also the most daunting because even for those without medical conditions, air travel involves expense, time investment, security screening, and for international travel, customs. And there's always the risk of delays and cancellations due to weather or other unforeseen issues that weigh on travelers. So, our goal today, whether you're a patient or a caregiver or a medical professional helping your patients, is to help you prepare as much as possible control what you can, and minimize the issues that nutrition therapy travelers face to get to their destinations and back home safely. So, I'm going to talk about navigating TSA screening, requesting assistance through TSA Cares, and why that's one of the most important things you can do to prepare for air travel, what to expect during your security screening, what to know about wheelchair assistance, medical baggage, and dealing with airlines, checking wheelchairs and motorized scooters, some tips for car, RV, and cruise travel, and some advice, general advice when traveling during the holidays. So, in my experience, nutrition therapy consumers and caregivers are most concerned with what will happen during the TSA screening. Will my IV bags be confiscated? Will they open my enteral formula? Will I miss my flight? So remember, first of all, that flight cancellations and delays uh, and changes with security operations happen all the time. So keep track of your flights and watch for news from your departing airports. For those carrying medical liquids and have devices on their bodies, the best way to prepare for screening is to request assistance through TSA Cares. And it's important because when the system works, it can provide peace of mind to travelers and save time at the screening area. So, for this audience, we're mainly talking about requesting help with the screening of parenteral nutrition or enteral formula, IV lines, feeding tubes, ostomies. But frankly, this information applies to any medical liquid or other medical devices a person might have. Thank you. So, here's some key tips we'll dive into regarding TSA. First, request assistance through TSA Cares at least 72 hours before departure. I met with officials from the TSA Disability Branch last week, and they asked me to emphasize this. They tell me that screening assistance through TSA Cares is more popular than ever and being requested more than ever. So, notifying them in advance can help ensure resources will be available to the traveler. That being said, please don't submit an assistance request too early, meaning months in advance. There's no advantage to that, and frankly, your request might get lost in the shuffle. If you submitted less than 72 hours before your flight, TSA will still put through the assistance request, but also advise you to request assistance from a supervisor or passenger support specialist when you arrive at the screening area. So, number two is arrive early. Officially, as you might know, TSA and the airlines say to arrive at the airport 2 hours ahead of domestic flights and 3 hours for international flights. But especially during the holidays and other busy times, I would add 30 minutes to that, and maybe depending on the amount of medical liquid you're carrying, maybe even more. Screening can take 15 minutes or it can take an hour. It's unpredictable. Staffing, security technology, screening technology, and other factors vary from airport to airport and sometimes from hour to hour. So changes changes to screening, can also keep people on their toes. So it's not the same every time. So prepare for a long screening and be pleasantly surprised if you sail through. Number three is declare or show your liquids to the screening officer. Don't put a cooler of TPN through or a carry-on full of enteral formula through into a scanner without telling the officer first. The worst scenarios I've heard from patients happen when the officers are surprised. Also mention if you have a medical device on your body. And number four, to go along with number three, communicate clearly with the screening officers about what you're carrying and your medical needs. Requesting assistance through TSA Cares is pretty easy. There's a form that travelers can complete on tsa.gov, which you see here on the screen, or you can call TSA Cares at the number listed here. The image I've included has only part of the form. Besides your contact information, be prepared to provide flight information and an explanation of your medical needs. So, for example, I would write carrying 3 TPN bags, 2 liters each. Or for enteral formula, you can use the brand name and say you're carrying 10 12-ounce containers. You want to list any flushes, multivitamins, other liquid medications, anything like that, a medically necessary liquid as the TSA terms it. And also include information about your medical devices on your body. So you might say PICC line, PICC IV line, left arm. And then anything else that this would be helpful for the screening officer to know about you and your medical needs. So when you submit these requests to the TSA Contact Center, the information is then distributed to the TSA manager at your airports of initial departure. And I say initial departure because TSA at your connecting airports is not usually notified. Unless you plan to leave the secure area in between flights, you wouldn't be rescreened before boarding a connecting flight. The only exception may be if you're boarding a flight for an international destination. And conversely, if you're traveling, if you're coming back home into the US and boarding a connecting flight, that's where you would be screened by TSA. So for example, you leave London, you land at JFK in New York. At JFK in New York, before boarding a flight to wherever your home is, that's where you'll be screened by TSA, and that flight should be part of your assistance request. The TSA manager will assign out your case to an officer. And when the system works properly, a TSA supervisor or officer called a passenger support specialist will contact you ahead of time, usually by email, although they may call you on a cell phone. And this could happen as late as the day of your flight. You will be instructed where to meet the officer or given a phone number to call when you arrive at the airport. Then they will escort you through the screening and explain everything they're doing through the process. And these officers have received more training on medical screening procedures. And that's important. Less experienced officers haven't received all the training yet, and they may not know how to handle your medical items. It should be noted, because of staffing, it isn't guaranteed that one of these officers will be assigned to you ahead of time or you'll be contacted. And for those of you who get to the TSA screening area and haven't been contacted, inform the officer who checks your ID that you're carrying medical liquids, and you would like a supervisor or a passenger support specialist to help with your screening. You can also show the officer a TSA notification card, which I'll talk about more on the next slide. So this card is a tool that the TSA offers. They offer these cards so travelers can discreetly communicate medical needs to officers. They're pretty useful for those who have trouble communicating verbally. I should mention that these are not required. In fact, the TSA's position has always been that they don't necessarily require documentation such as a doctor's letter because they can't verify it, and screening of medical liquids and medical devices must be performed regardless. There are cases where having documentation is helpful. As Vanessa explained, those specific documents about your pump to show TSA or airline personnel maybe to help get a bag fee waived, and definitely for customs and international airport security officials, you'll definitely want to carry pump letters. You'll want to carry a doctor's letter and prescription copies. Now, on this slide, I've filled out the card with general information. It says carrying medical liquids, medical devices on body, and I include screening assistance is needed. They don't give you a lot of room to write and type in these fields, but any information that you feel would be helpful to the screening officer should be noted. Blank notification cards can be downloaded from tsa.gov and then printed or saved to your phone. Next slide, please. So what to expect during your screening? Expect that your medical liquids will be thoroughly screened. TSA is still mainly concerned with liquids. Most travelers are familiar with the TSA's 311 rule. And this states that passengers can carry liquids, aerosols, gels, creams, pastes in containers of 3.4 ounces or less. And they must all fit in a one quart size bag. However, the TSA does allow for medical liquids that exceed this limit. Screening officers have final say on what gets through, although thankfully, in my years of experience helping nutrition therapy patients travel, feedback of medical liquids being confiscated is extremely rare. Some other things to remember about screening. TSA has set procedures, but what happens during your screening and how long it takes varies. So I've kind of said that. Be prepared for all scenarios. Your liquids may be put into a scanner. They may test the inside of a cooler, swab it. That's a common practice. They may swab ice packs, make sure those are fully frozen. Or they may do a pat down, a thorough pat down. So in all cases, you should be prepared for that kind of screening. Now, in some cases, you may be brought to an area away from the main scanner so the officer can test your items, and this may take longer as well. An officer may ask to open your liquids. I hear this mostly from those carrying enteral formula. You can say no and explain why it can't be opened. The officer will use another screening method, such as a pat down. Officers will not touch a medical device on your body. If you have an IV line, feeding tube, ostomies, etc., tell the officer where it is on your body. The officer may ask you to touch your dressing or tubing yourself and then test your hands. That's something common they do. If you wish, you can ask for a private screening. Almost. And keep in mind, though, that this may add more time. And also remember, there's a supervisor at every screening area. If you don't have a supervisor helping you from the start, maybe you've forgotten to ask, and sometimes things speed up in the security area and you kind of lose control quickly. But you can stop the screening. If you don't like how your items are being handled, how things are going, you can stop and ask for a supervisor immediately. Next slide, please. So you may have other medical needs and wonder what information TSA has to offer and what the procedures are for these. This slide shows all of the different categories on TSA Cares under disabilities and medical conditions. Please note there are separate entries for implants and internal medical devices, medications, ostomies, ports and catheters, respiratory equipment, service animals, and much more. So it's a good idea to consult tsa.gov and be prepared before you fly. So let's talk about wheelchair assistance, medical bags, and the airlines. I have told all of my patients over the years, if you're on the fence about whether to get wheelchair assistance, please get it. Airline travel can be tiring. Nutrition therapy patients may need to conserve energy. And having wheelchair assistance means an attendant will push you from curbside or just inside the door all the way to the gate. And if you need it, they'll bring an aisle wheelchair so to get you to your seat on the plane. You'll be brought to the front of the TSA line and be among the first to board the plane. And remember that the airlines and TSA are overseen by separate agencies. TSA does not provide wheelchair assistance. The airlines provide wheelchair assistance. So make sure to add wheelchair assistance to your airline ticket reservation. Incidentally, TSA does not require wheelchair users to stand. Screening can be performed while the person is sitting. Regarding medical baggage, some airlines waive fees for medical baggage, as Vanessa said. And to have the best chance to get a fee waived, I've found that only medical items should be in a particular bag. For carry-ons, be aware that exceeding the carry-on limit can lead to issues with airline personnel. You can have a letter to back you up, but you will need to advocate for yourself, and outcomes vary. It's best to call the airline ahead of time to discuss. Label your checked medical baggage. So you can use specialized tags or universal symbols that alert handlers that the bags contain medical items. One of our patients recently on a trip she printed out the wheelchair symbol and printed a bunch of them out and taped them to her luggage. And I thought that was a great idea because this is a universal symbol. Baggage handlers would quickly see that and understand that there's something medically going on with this baggage. If you don't need medical wheelchair assistance, I should say, you can still contact the airline and request pre-boarding for medical reasons. And this helps to get settled on the plane. You can rest a few minutes. Call, I should say, if you have TPN or enteral formula, and you're going to want to make sure that you have room for this in the overhead. So it's a good reason to do that. Many airlines have web pages and phone numbers to call for special screening services, call special services for medical needs. So check out your airline's resources. It's a good idea to call ahead of time, ask about their policies and what you need to consider. And the TSA officials, when I talked to them last week, reminded me that the FAA requires that every airline has a complaint resolution officer to handle issues. So that's where you would direct complaints if you have any type of complaint with the airlines. For complaints for TSA, you would contact TSA Cares for that. One other thing that was brought up by one of our friends on the last webinar, and that's use the invisible disability designation if you need it. Many people on nutrition therapy don't look like they have physical issues. And the Invisible Disabilities Association states people living with invisible disabilities report they're often overlooked or even disregarded because their challenges are not evident to others. The association offers an ID card that can be shown to first responders, medical personnel, retail establishments, and transportation companies like airlines. So see invisibledisabilities.org for more information. This member of our community said he states he has an invisible disability to get on the plane early with wheelchair users and get all of his PN and supplies stowed without hassle. Next slide, please. So a few things to know about check-in wheelchairs and scooters. Be sure your equipment is clearly labeled with name, address, and phone number. You can get a gate tag from the gate agent. Consult with your airline again. Some ask, you can find this online if you go to your airline's website. They may ask for the dimensions of your wheelchair or scooter, the serial number, etc. Some of them have these forms online. Make sure you document the make, model, and serial number and normal wear of your wheelchair or scooter. For battery-operated mobility devices, contact your airline and make sure that the battery type is approved for travel. Some batteries must be removed and taken on the plane as a carry-on. If your device requires any safe handling or disassembly, attach these instructions to it. And when you arrive at your final destination, look over your equipment. Make sure it's in good working condition before leaving the airport. If there's any issues, notify the gate agent or baggage service office if you need to. Next slide, please. So we do have a few tips for other modes of transportation. So if you're traveling by car or RV and have multiple destinations planned, call your nutrition therapy provider and ask where they can deliver for you. Pad seat belts with soft material to protect your central line during a sudden stop. On long trips, get out of the vehicle and walk around at least every 2 hours to prevent blood clots. For those cruisers out there like me, I'm a big fan. Call your cruise line and ask to connect with the medical director and ask how they can assist with your medical needs. Ask if the medical personnel have experience with central lines or feeding tube issues. And ask if the medical personnel have experience, please ask about the cabin fridge. So as Vanessa said, some fridges, whether it be hotels or it could be your cabin on a cruise, they may be not large enough to hold your TPN, and some are just chiller fridges, not cold enough to store TPN. So you want to make sure about that. And for international travel, call your health insurance to inquire about your coverage and consider travel insurance as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So it is the holiday season, whether we're ready or not. And so here are a few general tips when traveling during the holidays. Build extra time into your journey. Besides this being a good idea for TSA screening, it may give you an advantage in talking to airline personnel during delays or cancellations. And I believe the more we rush, the greater chance of making a mistake, like forgetting something important. Maybe you need extra time to sit down, take a breather, go to the bathroom, grab some nutrition or hydration. All of these are good reasons to take extra time, take it slow. Next is keep emergency items and all of your important documentation in your carry-on. Common sense, but don't let yourself be separated from the items you need the most. Make sure you take rest days during long trips. Remember, I should have put on this slide maybe an image of Mount Everest, because it's you want to come back healthy. It's not just getting to your destination, it's getting back home safely. That's just as important. And have some kind of plan for emergency situations. Work with your therapy provider, go over the scenarios and what the backup plan is. So for example, if something gets lost or damaged with your medical supplies. Keep yourself safe by carrying a mask and hand sanitizer. You don't want to be stuck on a plane next to someone who seems ill without being able to take your own precautions. Stay hydrated. I always carry ORS, water. Um, Grab something, even if you think, oh, I'll just get something when we're in the air. If there's turbulence, you're not going to get a drink as fast as you may need it. So carry something, whether that be water, oral rehydration with you, uh, whatever you need to do. Next slide, please. On this slide, we've listed some online travel resources for you, including the Moog and Nutrishare, and Nutrishare websites are travel pages that have a wealth of information, and also TSA resources. And of course, travel tips from our friends at the Oli Foundation. If you don't know about Oli, it's the main education and support group for those living on home nutrition therapy, and you should definitely check out what they have to offer. And a closing thought for you all. While traveling with nutrition support isn't easy, in most cases, a successful trip will be the outcome, especially with proper planning and people to help along the way. Thank you very much, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.